This is Steve here in my workshop. This is Wednesday. We're doing Shopsmith Mark 4 7520 live episode 3. Today is on selecting the right kind of material for your projects. Back in the first live, I asked for input on people who wanted could tell me what they'd like to see on these. And Scott Markwood said he wanted me to talk about different types of materials. And I wasn't sure exactly what he wanted me to talk about, but we'll see if this is it today or not. So I originally was going to do it tomorrow, but I changed it today because I'm going in for surgery tomorrow, and I didn't know how I was going to feel after that. So
you had two people saying.
In any case,
three people saying.
So if you're signing in, if you're on the live chat, if you would just put in your first name and the city and state where you're from, it just helps me to know kind of where everybody's from, and it helps me to get to know you, and then you can get to know me. So what I was doing most of the day today was I was making a new clutter collector for my machine. Some of you have seen my videos before. I don't have it under there now because I decided I want to make a new one. The one I had it worked fine, but it was old, and I just figured, well, let's go ahead and make a new one. The original was out of 3/8 inch plywood. It's supposed to be out of 1/2 inch, so I made it out of 1/2 inch this time. So this is a good example to ask the question, how did I decide what materials I want to use on it? So first I'm going to pull out what I've done so far. I'll bring up the workbench. The clutter collector is very simple. It just has 4 sides and a bottom, and then it has 2 hangers so it can hang on your lower bars here on your machine. So some of you may have never seen this or may have never heard of it before. That's because it was written originally for the original Mark 5 500, and Shopsmith back then sold a set of plans. It was called the Shopsmith Sawdust Collection System. It was built around the Shopmate vacuum that they sold that had 2 2.5 inch ports. And at that time, none of the machines had dust collection on them. There was no dust collection port on the bandsaw, nor on the jointer. The belt sander didn't have one. Even then, the machine itself, your Mark 5, that didn't even have dust collection on it. So that's what these were. There was a set of plans that you could make your own out of wood, and they had a whole section in here. So what I've just isolated from here the one that talks about the clutter collector. So the clutter collector originally made for the Mark 5, and here I'll show you. Originally, it had a set of plans, so here you could make, this one here was for adding on the original metal lower saw guard on the Mark 5. If you wanted to do dados, they had a spacer here you could make and put in there to do that. Then they had this here was to put on the jointer. That's what this one down here was for.
They really can't see the pictures.
So thought I'd put it up close to the camera so you can see it a little better. I'm not using my lapel microphone today. I wasn't sure if it was fully charged or not, so I'm just using the one that comes on my tablet. Then I'll bring this other one up there so you can see this a little closer. They have one also for, Dottie, you can tell me where to move if I need to.
That's good.
So they had one, this was a little joint connector box so that you could have dust collection to multiple machines at once. And so you'd run a hose into it, and then you'd have 2 hoses come out to it. So that was that before. Then this was here for the bandsaw to do dust collection. Both of these here, that's what that was for. So if you have an original Mark 5 500 that doesn't have any of this stuff, you could make these for yours if you want to. I don't know why you want to, because you can buy one. that Shopsmith makes for them now. And then, let's see here. So for the clutter collector, they provided a real nice set here. This upper part here shows you the clutter collector. Now, Shopsmith doesn't sell this anymore. Some people ask me, Steve, can you send me a copy of the plans? Well, yeah, I guess I could, but it's still copyright protected by Shopsmith, and so I'm afraid I'm not going to do that. So anyway, they show here all the dimensions for each of the pieces. The original one actually had a piece here that attached to the side here so that it could take dust and stuff that would fall off your table, and then it would fall down that chute right in there. And because back then the Mark 5500, the tables were so small. Okay, so you can see right here the clutter collector here itself. It has 2 sides, 2 ends. It has a bottom, and then these 2 hanger bars, and then there's just 1/4 inch carriage bolts that go through that with a wing nut that hang on there. So that's how that works. So moving on to selecting the material, the plans call for plywood, and I did use plywood, but there's different types of plywood. This plywood here, this is 1/2 inch. It's AC plywood, which means it's got one good face that's going to be without blemishes, and then the back side, it can have knots and holes and that type of thing in it. And this has, let's see, 1, 2, 3, this is 5, this is 5 plies is what this has. Okay, so then this here is MDF, medium density fiberboard. I could have made it out of that. I could have made it out of 1/2 inch MDF, and but there's a reason why I don't use MDF on something like this, and that is because of the weight. MDF is a lot heavier than plywood, and I just didn't want the extra weight from it. Also, MDF screws and nails for it going into the edge of it. It doesn't hold as well as using plywood. And then of course, because it's so large, you're not going to use softwood like pine, and you're certainly not going to go with a hardwood like oak. You're not going to do the expense of that for a clutter collector. And then the other choice is you could use Baltic birch plywood. Now this is some 3/4 inch. It has 13 plies in it. The nice thing on this is that it has no voids. Every single layer of Baltic birch plywood is perfect. There's no voids. If there were any, they will fill them and they'll patch them. Like see the football there. So there's no voids whatsoever in the middle of these. And so the nice thing is also the edges will finish nicely. Screws will go in the edges great. They'll go into the top, and it's just, and for appearance it's nice. So, but this stuff costs money, and a lot more money than plywood. So 3/4 inch Baltic birch, it's going to run you about $4 a square foot.
Is that BALT?
BALTIC, yeah, Baltic birch. That's where it is. So, but still, $4 a square foot, that's still cheaper than most hardwoods. So a lot of people balk at the cost, but I like using Baltic birch for certain applications, and I'll talk to you about some of those here. So for example, this jig here, this is one of the jigs that's made in the new self-study course, which is coming out here 1st of April, and I made that all out of Baltic birch. And I like this because Baltic birch is extremely stable, and it machines nice, and it drills really cleanly. When you cut it, it cuts cleanly on the table saw. If you want to do any routing, like I did a slot here, it routes very nicely. Even if you wanted to put a shaped edge on Baltic birch, it'll do very nicely. So Baltic birch is really, and so if I'm doing jigs or fixtures, that I want to be using over and over again. They're going to get some good wear. I'm going to use Baldy birch. I'm not going to go with MDF because MDF wears a lot faster than what Baldy birch will. So, and also the MDF, it's over time it won't be as straight. If you've got some long runs of MDF and get some moisture in there, it can warp on you. So that's the other reason I use this when I'm doing some really nice jigs and fixtures. So we'll hang this back up here. Then some other items that are made in the self-study course are these simple miter gauge stanchions. And of course, Shopsmiths actually sold in their catalog many years ago one of these that you could buy from. There was already, and then the nice thing on the design is that it's reversible, meaning that when you put it on your miter gauge, I'm going to take this off so I can get to it a little bit easier. By reversible, I mean you can put it on this way, or you can flip it and put it on that way. The holes are placed exactly so that that will do that. So on the self-study course, I gave people the option of making this either out of Baltic birch or out of regular plywood or out of hardwood. And so I made it out of all of them. And I use them equally. This here is, I made this one out of regular plywood, I made this one out of ash, and I made this one out of Baltic birch. And so if you're going to have something where your item is going to be disposable, you don't want to probably spend a lot of money on hardwood or on Baltic birch. I would recommend if it's like something like this, you're probably going to use these over and over, and over time, especially if you run a saw curve through here, over time you're going to probably want to replace it. So in that case, I'll have some out of MDF and also out of regular inexpensive plywood for that. So then, so when you're doing your projects, you just want to ask yourself, what is it that you want to, what's the purpose of the project? So one of the things I see a lot of people doing, the mistake, and most woodworkers in their early years, and I made the same mistake when I first started, is they will start to make a project and they start to make the project out of the good stuff that they're going to end up with. So they're using some expensive oak or some maple or some walnut, and they make a serious mistake, and then they try to patch it and fix it because they don't want to spend the money to replace that expensive hardwood. Well, you shouldn't be doing your final projects out of the expensive stuff. You want to use MDF. You can get MDF either in 3/4 inch or 1/2 inch, and do all of your pieces, your test pieces and all your test cuts and all your fitting your joints and everything for your setup, do it on MDF. Make your mistakes on that stuff. It's inexpensive, and then after you get that, then you use the good stuff. I belong to the Omaha Woodworkers Guild, and Jesse, he's a professional woodworker. He works for Eurowood Cabinets, and that's what he does for a living. And he shows us this all the time, that he'll spend probably, when he's doing a project, he'll probably spend, if you take the total time he spends on a project, 2/3 of his time, he said, is spent doing test cuts and doing with MDF and getting things set up and making special jigs and all that kind of stuff. 2/3 of the time is spent doing that. Only 1/3 of the time of the project, as he says, that I actually spend doing on the final good stuff. So I think at this point, I'm going to just kind of stop and see if anybody has any questions or comments or anything you want me to talk about. None?
Tell them to type it in the chat.
So if you have a question, type it in the chat. I really didn't have much planned tonight other than what I've just gone over with you. Because as I said, I'm going into surgery tomorrow, and I just didn't want to spend a lot of time on this evening. So in any case, if nobody has any questions, I think I'm going to probably just wrap this up here.
None yet.
Okay, well, thanks for watching, and see you in a couple more weeks.
You want to see who signed in? We have Piston Honda from New York, Ron Allman from San Antonio, and Scott Wiley from Scooter Wiley, Pennsylvania.
Great. Thanks for watching.
Go hit the X. All right.